Welcome to criminal law class. This is a class on battery, understanding the actus reus and mens rea of battery in criminal law. My name's Nasir Hafizi. I'm a solicitor and senior lecturer, and hopefully this class will be useful for those who are undertaking the law degree, the PGDL conversion course, and also the SQE, the Solicitor Qualifying Examinations. So the learning objectives in this class are to understand the physical elements required for battery, the actus reus, to consider the mens rea, grasp the mental elements necessary for this offence of battery, and to consider real-world applications, learn how battery occurs in practical scenarios. By the end of this class, you will, I hope, gain an understanding of how battery is established and prosecuted in criminal law. As always in these criminal law classes, there are true and false questions. Question 1 is, true or false, battery is also known as physical assault because it involves the actual infliction of unlawful force. Question 2, true or false, the actus reus of battery can only be satisfied through direct physical contact such as pushing or hitting. Question 3, true or false, throwing an object or spitting at someone may amount to battery as it counts as indirect application of force. Question 4, true or false, remote applications of force such as setting a dog on a person cannot amount to battery because the defendant does not touch the victim directly. Question 5, true or false, the case of Haystead versus Chief Constable of Derbyshire confirmed that force can be applied indirectly and still satisfy the actus reus of battery. Question 6, true or false, even the slightest unlawful touching is enough to constitute battery. There's no need to prove injury. Question 7, true or false, the mens rea of battery requires intention or recklessness as to causing unlawful force. Question 8, true or false, to establish battery, it must be shown that the defendant intended or foresaw actual injury to the victim. Question 9, true or false, the subjective test of recklessness applies to battery just as it does to simple assault. And in question 10, true or false, battery is distinguished from simple assault because it requires the application of force rather than the victim's apprehension of it. As always, there are also some single best answer questions. Look at this one. Question 1, a defendant angry at his neighbour victim deliberately pours a bucket of water on the pavement outside the victim's front door in winter. Victim later slips on the ice that forms and injures her wrist. Defendant argues that he never touched the victim, so he cannot be guilty of battery. Which is the correct legal position? Is it A, D is not guilty because there was no direct physical contact? Is it B, D is guilty because battery can be committed through indirect application of unlawful force? Is it C, D is not guilty because victim suffered an injury which is too serious for battery? Is it D, D is guilty only if victim was aware of the risk before she slipped? Or is it E, defendant is not guilty because the actus reus of battery requires actual bodily harm? And then you've got the single best answer question 2. During an office meeting, the defendant lightly taps V on the shoulder to get his attention, but the victim insists he had not consented to being touched and complains to the police. Which principle best applies? Is it A, D is guilty because any physical touching, however slight, is battery? Is it B, D is not guilty because trivial and social acceptable contact is not considered unlawful? C, is it C, D is guilty only if the victim suffered visible injury from the touching? Or is it D, D is guilty because consent can never apply to battery? Or is it D, D is not guilty because recklessness must be proved for minor touchings? And then there's one final single best answer question. At a crowded concert, D swings his arms in frustration after being jostled. He does not see the victim standing behind him and his arms strike the victim in the face, causing the victim to stumble. D admits he did not intend to hit anyone but accepts he knew there was a chance of hitting someone in the packed space. So which is the correct legal position? Is it A, D is not guilty because he did not intend to hit the victim? Is it B, D is guilty because recklessness as to unlawful force is sufficient mens rea for battery? Is it C, D is not guilty because V did not suffer an injury? Is it D is guilty only if V apprehends the strike before it happened? Or is it E, D is not guilty because battery requires proof of intention to cause injury? So let's look at battery, defining battery. If simple assault is causing the victim to apprehend immediate and unlawful personal force, battery, also known as physical assault, is the infliction of that force, because any unlawful touching may suffice. The offence is also referred to as physical assault. Battery involves actual physical contact, while simple assault requires only the apprehension of that force. So let's look at the actus reus of battery, or the physical elements. The actus reus of battery, i.e. Physical assault, requires the infliction of unlawful personal force on the victim. This force may be applied in various ways: direct physical contact, pushing, prodding or hitting between two people. This may involve weapons such as a kosh, knife or gun. Indirect application, throwing objects, spitting at someone, or deliberately cycling over the defendant's foot. Or remote force, placing obstacles behind a door or setting a dog on the victim. The case of Hasted versus Chief Constable of Derbyshire. Now this is an interesting case. It supports the view that force can be applied indirectly. The court held that the defendant was guilty of physical assault on a baby when he punched the baby's mother, causing her to drop the child. The defendant argued that actus reus required direct physical contact with the victim, that is the child. The court rejected this argument. Degree of force required, very slight. The degree of force required is very slight, and even the least touching will satisfy the actus reus. The prosecution does not need to establish that any harm or injury is suffered by the victim. No injury needs to be proven. Any unlawful touching suffices. Let's look at the mens rea, the mental element of this offence. The mens rea of battery, that is physical assault, is the intention or recklessness as to the infliction of unlawful personal force on another person. And this can be satisfied through intention, deliberate application of unlawful force, or through recklessness, conscious risk taking regarding unlawful force. There is no need to show intent or recklessness as to causing any injury. As with simple assault, the subjective test applies. Now look at the practical applications. Steve, Tony and Miranda. Look at the situation. 1, the threat. Steve tells Tony he will break every bone in Miranda's body if Tony continues seeing her. This is not simple assault, as Tony doesn't apprehend violence against himself, and Miranda is not present to apprehend unlawful violence on her. Conditional threat. If Steve speaks to Miranda directly and tells her he will break every bone in her body if she continues to see Tony, it still may not be simple assault, because the threat is conditional, dependent on her continuing to see Tony, and it also depends on the immediacy requirement, and that's what we talked about in the previous class on simple assault. And then there's battery. Tony ignores Steve and continues to see Miranda. Steve goes looking for Miranda and punches Miranda in her face. Steve has committed battery by actually inflicting unlawful force on Miranda. Summary parts. So in summary, the elements of this is the actus reus. There must be an infliction of unlawful personal force. It can be direct or indirect. It can be very slight degree of force suffices. No injury is required. The mens rea is intention or recklessness as to the infliction of unlawful force. No need for intent to injure, and it is a subjective test, not an objective test. Remember that we have these true and false questions. Please feel free to pause and look at the next slide for the answer. Here is the slide with the answers. Let's look at the next slide, which is to do with single best answer questions. Question 1, read it again, feel free to pause it. Question 2, feel free to read it again, pause the slide. And then the next slide is the answer. And then the final question, single best answer question, is here. Please feel free to pause the slide, see if you can get the answer. And then here is the answer. So basically, let's look at the key takeaways. Battery is distinguished from simple assault by the actual application of force rather than mere apprehension of it. The law sets a very low threshold of what constitutes sufficient force, ensuring comprehensive protection against unwanted physical contact. Protection, any unlawful touching is sufficient for battery. The intent is intentional recklessness as to the force application, and no injury is required for successful prosecution. Thank you for watching this class. Please do subscribe to the channel. Please watch all the classes on the series, and I'm hoping this will be useful for those who are taking the law degree, the PGDL, and also the SQE as a reminder.